In my previous life, my sister-in-law was pregnant with quadruplets, but during a prenatal checkup, it was discovered that 2 of them had supermale syndrome, and 1 had Down syndrome. I interpreted the report for her, explained what supermale and Down syndrome meant, and persuaded her to undergo a fetal reduction surgery, citing the high risks associated with multiple pregnancies. Later, she gave birth to a daughter who was healthy and had all her limbs intact. But she suffered a massive hemorrhage during childbirth and had to have her uterus removed. After leaving the operating room, she seemed to go mad, screaming hysterically. "The other 3 were all boys. You were jealous of me, so you tricked me into having the surgery. Give me back my son." In her agitation, she pushed me down the stairs. Opening my eyes again, my sister-in-law was asking me about the test results. I handed her the report and said with a smile, 3 boys and 1 girl. "What a perfect combination, Mary, you really are so blessed." Sister-in-law, what do these terms, XYY, high risk, mean? I don't understand them at all. Amidst the puzzled voice of my sister-in-law, Mary, I slowly opened my eyes. When I realized I was sitting on a hospital chair, it suddenly dawned on me, I actually reincarnated. Beside me, Mary impatiently shoved the report into my hands. "Even though you work in gastroenterology, you must have studied this, right? Hurry up and explain to me. What on earth does this XYY mean?" I stared fixedly at the conclusion on the report. In an instant, a flood of memories rushed into my mind. In my previous life, Mary was pregnant with quadruplets, but during the non-invasive prenatal testing, the results indicated abnormalities. Since it was quadruplets, to increase accuracy, the doctor recommended amniocentesis. The test results came back. Out of the 4 fetuses, 2 were supermales, 1 had Down syndrome, and only 1 was completely normal. At the time, she didn't understand what these meant, so she came to ask me. I told her that supermales are born bad seeds, with extremely strong aggression. I searched for many news articles to show her, most of those who killed their parents, endangered society, or even ended up in prison were found to have supermale syndrome. I then showed her photos of children with Down syndrome. Most of these children have intellectual disabilities, weak motor skills, and may even suffer from other organ deformities. If we rashly bring him into this world, his life might be very difficult. I asked her, "Can you protect him for a lifetime? Can you accept having a disabled child for the rest of your life?" She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she held the report. After a long while, she looked up and asked me, "Does Chao Xiong mean it's a boy?" "Yes." I could see the reluctance in her eyes, but I couldn't help trying to persuade her. "At least we still have 1 healthy one. We can abort the 3 with problems, and you can still have more children later if you want. Even if we don't, our family can raise the healthy one safely and well, right?" Her eyes were already reddening as she retorted, "Then is the healthy one a boy or a girl?" I understood what she was really asking, but I still answered honestly, "I can't go into the ultrasound room, and my colleagues won't disclose that information, but nowadays, whether it's a boy or a girl, it's all the same. Besides, you can always have another child in the future." She didn't speak, lowering her head, her hands slowly stroking her belly. After wrestling with it for a long time, she finally spoke. "Sister-in-law, I think I'll still go through with the reduction." I breathed a sigh of relief and scheduled an appointment for her with the best chief physician at our hospital to perform the fetal reduction. The fetal reduction surgery was very successful. Mary rested in bed for a month before returning to work. Later, during her prenatal checkups, everything went smoothly. I thought the matter was finally over. Who would have thought that she would suffer a massive hemorrhage on the day of delivery? To save her life, the doctors had to remove her uterus. The baby was brought out, a girl, perfectly healthy and quite beautiful, but the moment her mother-in-law heard it was a girl, her face instantly darkened. She glared sideways at the delivery room, gnashing her teeth as she cursed. "Out of 4, 3 were taken, and the only one left is a girl. This hospital is doing it on purpose. They want our Liu family to die out." She kept shoving Mary's husband, Edward Turner. "Go find a lawyer right now. We're suing him. If we don't sue him until he goes bankrupt, I'll be his grandson." Edward Turner's eyes were red with anger. He vented his frustration by kicking the delivery room door, then turned and walked away. My husband Tom Smith also pointed at my nose and scolded, "It's all because of you, you wretched woman, talking too much and insisting she reduce the pregnancy. If Mary gets divorced this time, I won't let you off." Not long after, Mary was wheeled out from inside. Upon learning that her uterus had been removed, even in her weakened state, she still wore a fierce expression, appearing almost deranged. She struggled to get up from the bed, gritted her teeth, and lunged at me. Grabbing my neck with both hands, screaming hysterically, "I've lost my uterus. How am I supposed to have children in the future? I finally managed to conceive 4, but all I gave birth to was a girl. How am I supposed to face the Liu family with any dignity? Rose, you're just jealous of me, you can't get pregnant, so you envy me for having 3 sons. I'm going to kill you, kill you." She was acting crazy, her grip growing stronger and stronger. I couldn't break free, my vision went dark, and my legs gave way as I collapsed to the floor. Fortunately, we were in the hospital. Several nurses rushed over in a flurry, quickly restraining her and administering a sedative. She fell into a deep sleep, but a week later, she went to the dean's office. She said I was colluding with people outside, leaking the gender of the fetus in exchange for benefits. She provided many screenshots of chat records. All of it was forged by my husband, Tom Smith, who secretly took my phone behind my back. I couldn't defend myself and was fired by the hospital. I didn't argue too much. After all, she had just lost her uterus and was in her postpartum confinement. I could understand her being in a bad mood, yet she still refused to let it go. After her confinement period, when no one was around, she pushed me down the stairs. I couldn't dodge in time, and my head hit a rock, leaving me breathless on the spot. This scene was captured by surveillance cameras, and Mary was immediately taken into custody. But I have no father or mother. My husband and mother-in-law, as family members, issued a letter of forgiveness on the grounds that the mother's hormones were unstable after childbirth. The court, considering Mary was in the breastfeeding period, sentenced her to probation, but later, Edward Turner filed for divorce because she could no longer have children. She vented her resentment at being abandoned by her husband onto the only girl, beating and scolding her all day long. Not long after, the child was beaten to death. At the thought of this, a chill spread up my back, and I instinctively shivered. Mary beside me was still anxiously waiting for my reply. My whole body stiffened, and I swallowed hard with a lingering sense of fear. Then forced a faint smile. "Congratulations, Mary, you're carrying 3 boys and 1 girl. What a blessing you have." Hearing this, her tense expression instantly broke into a smile. "Really, 3 boys?" She grew worried again. "Won't that make it difficult to give birth? Will my belly get stretched out of shape?" "Of course not." I pretended to sound envious. "You're the great hero of the Liu family now. Once the baby is born, they'll definitely hire a nanny and get you a beauty salon membership. What are you afraid of getting stretched out of shape for?" Hearing this, her eyes immediately lit up. Although Edward Turner was uneducated and lacked any real skills, his family owned a factory. Their annual income was at least in the millions. She had always intended to secure Edward Turner's heart by bearing him several sons. This time, "I'm carrying triplets." As if envisioning a beautiful future life, she relaxed completely, leaning lazily against the hospital chair with an expression of pure happiness. "That's wonderful. It seems even fate is on my side." Suddenly, as if remembering something, she turned to me and asked, "What does this XYY mean, and what about this 21 high risk?" I explained, 2 supermales, 1 Down syndrome child. It said that supermales tend to be more aggressive, but that's not always the case. I pulled up the recent debunking video released by the doctor to show her. People are shaped by nurture. At birth, human nature is inherently good, and the social environment plays a crucial role. With careful guidance, how could there be any issues? Besides, you are so kind-hearted. How could any child of yours turn out badly? Moreover, these are 2 sons. In ancient times, they would have been great generals. Even today, they represent valuable labor. Your family runs a factory and needs manpower, don't they? What about Down syndrome?" She still looked at the report with deep concern. I smiled and said, "That's for you to decide. However, you're already 20 weeks along, and the risks of fetal reduction are significant. If not handled properly, you could lose all 4 children, and it could cause serious harm to your own health. You need to think this through carefully." She fell silent, her hands slowly stroking her belly as if wrestling with a dilemma. After a long silence, so long that I thought she was considering reducing the pregnancy, she finally spoke slowly. "You're right, Edward Turner's family is so wealthy, they can afford to raise a child with Down syndrome. I'll give birth to it, first to secure his heart and prove my fertility. There will be plenty of opportunities to have more children in the future." After she left, I shared the news of her carrying hyperandrogenism twins with the media. They were also informed of Mary's next prenatal checkup time. The next prenatal checkup was scheduled for a month later. On that day, I arrived at the hospital early and waited. Sure enough, as soon as Mary appeared, Several people wielding cameras and lighting equipment immediately swarmed around her. "Are you Miss Mary?" They recognized Mary at a glance. Mary was almost startled. "Who are you?" "We are from the media. We heard you are carrying supermale twins and would like to interview you." Mary turned pale with fright and hurriedly covered her stomach. "How did you find out?" The reporter didn't even bother to address her question, quickly shoving the microphone toward her mouth. "Are you planning to give birth to the twins? I heard they're chimeric supermales. If they commit crimes in the future, they might not even be traceable. You know they're supermales, right? If you insist on giving birth to them, you're endangering society, you know that." A female internet celebrity stared at her with a righteous and indignant expression. "I heard you're also carrying a child with Down syndrome. Out of the quadruplets, 3 have issues. Do you really plan to give birth to them? What were you thinking?" Mary was so overwhelmed by the barrage of questions that her mind went blank. She quickly pulled me over, dragging me in front of her to shield herself. I hurriedly tried to comfort her. "What are you afraid of? Say whatever you want to say. You are the child's mother. And you have the right to decide whether to keep the child or not. Besides, you're carrying quadruplets. It's very rare. Once the interview comes out, everyone will know, and then many formula and diaper manufacturers will come to help you. Your children will essentially be born with a head start in life." Her nervous expression eased a bit, tinged with a hint of disdain. "The Liu family has money. They don't care about that at all." I gave her a frustrated smack. Wishing she could be more capable. "You silly girl, that's all the Liu family's money. You're pregnant now and don't have a job. If you could earn a bit more money for the Liu family, wouldn't they think more highly of you? No family ever complains about having too much money." Hearing me say this, she finally cheered up. She told the interviewer to wait a moment, smoothed her hair again, then asked me for a lipstick to touch up her lip color. Only then did she turn around, revealing a perfectly measured smile, and answered the reporter's questions one by one. "How should I put it? I think that when a child comes, it's fate, no matter what they're like. As a mother, I would never give up on them. What's wrong with Down syndrome? Should a child with Down syndrome be aborted? If they chose you to be their mother, it must be because they believed you could take good care of them. And I happen to have the ability and the love. I believe I can take care of them for a lifetime. Besides, doctors have already debunked the rumor. Being born with an extra Y chromosome doesn't make someone inherently evil. Can you please stop spreading such ideas here? Do you really think you can handle the social panic you're causing?" She grew more confident with every word, as if transforming into a deity filled with compassion for all living beings, radiating light from head to toe. "You always talk about aborting this one or that one. It wasn't easy for me to conceive quadruplets in the first place, and with just a casual remark from you, 3 lives would be gone. Have any of you ever been parents? Are you really that cruel? Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cubs. These are my children in my womb. What right do you have to judge me, to condemn a fetus so easily? That's the real crime." Several people, having been labeled by her, fell silent. Mary grew even more smug. She denounced those individuals as unscrupulous, criticized the hospital's security for being inadequate, and then, without answering any of their questions, lifted her chin and went in for her prenatal checkup. That very night, the video went viral online. Mary's scolding voice formed a stark contrast with the online criticisms. The comments below instantly surged to 999 plus. "What's going on? Carrying a bad seed and still acting righteous, that's really terrifying. It said that supermales release a hormone that makes the mother reluctant to abort them. I feel like she's already under the control of that hormone." Looking at her IP address, "At least she's in City C. I won't be going there anymore. How terrifying. What kind of children could someone like that raise? Who knows, maybe his family carries the supermale gene." That night, the sound of cursing from Mary's house also rose and fell incessantly, but it was all directed at the reporters. Edward Turner's mother watched the news and couldn't help but spit out, "What do they know? How many women can get pregnant with 4 at once? They're just jealous." "Exactly," Mary chimed in, cursing along. "What is supermale, 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 superheroes? Once they're born, let's see who dares to talk nonsense." Edward Turner nodded. "Our family runs a factory. Once they grow up and take over the business, let's see who would dare to rebel." They reached a consensus, no matter what outsiders said. It was all out of jealousy. They simply couldn't stand to see them doing well. They decided to have all 4 children. As the conversation drew to a close, Edward Turner was especially moved and embraced Mary. "You've worked so hard. Carrying 4 babies is already difficult enough, and you've had to endure such heavy gossip on top of it." Edward Turner's mother also immediately promised, Once the children are born, I'll buy you a villa, and it will be registered under your sons' names." Really, Mary was so happy she couldn't close her mouth. "Thank you, Mom, you're really the best." The next day, someone surrounded their house. Some local residents had heard about this and came to form an anti-super alliance. Some people from the neighborhood came to their door in groups. Even community workers came to their home, urging them to abort the child. Hundreds of people crowded the entire hallway, shouting and demanding that they have an abortion. The people at the front even brought microphones, cameras, and lighting equipment to live stream the scene to the entire internet. They earnestly advised Mary to have the abortion and demanded that she make a public promise in front of her hundreds of thousands of followers. Mary hid at home, too afraid to come out. These people thought Mary was scared, so they banged on the door and shouted her name. The door to Mary's home remained tightly shut. This silence only made them shout even louder. Someone grew impatient and started kicking the door, but just then, the door was opened from the inside. Edward Turner rushed out from his home, suddenly snatched everything from their hands, and smashed it all fiercely onto the ground. For a moment, equipment and phones clattered and shattered all over the floor. Edward Turner's gaze was sinister and fierce as he glared at the people at the front. Get out of here." The few of them widened their eyes, stunned and rooted to the spot. Seeing no one move, Edward Turner's eyes turned fierce. He delivered a swift kick to the chest of the female reporter at the front, sending her sprawling to the ground. How dare he resort to violence? The crowd's expressions changed dramatically, erupting into an uproar as they surged forward to condemn Edward Turner. But then they saw Edward Turner's eyes turn bloodshot, revealing a sinister and ferocious expression. He grabbed the collar of the male reporter who was pointing at him and cursing the most fiercely, slapped him several times across the face, then glared at him with a savage expression and asked, "Are you leaving or not?" Before the man could respond, Edward Turner seized him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. His face contorted as he spat out each word, "Get out, delete the video, or I'll kill you." The male reporter was terrified. Edward Turner, who was already nearly 2 meters tall, had him suspended in mid-air. He struggled desperately, gasping for breath, his neck tightly gripped by Edward Turner, unable to break free no matter how hard he tried. His face turned pale with fear, his eyes wide and bulging. His plea for mercy trembled, almost seeping through the cracks of his throat. Let's go, we'll leave right now." Edward Turner tossed him to the ground as if he were a chicken. Hundreds of people scattered like startled birds, fleeing in panic. That very night, all videos about them vanished from the internet. 5 months later, Mary scheduled a cesarean section. To meet their first grandson, the entire Liu family went. As a member of Mary's maternal family, my mother-in-law also took us along. We waited outside the operating room for a full hour before the door finally opened. The nurse hurriedly called Edward Turner in for a discussion. After a long while, the nurse came out with deep regret. The mother had a massive hemorrhage, but both the baby and the mother were saved. However, the baby is quite small and will need to stay in the incubator for a while. As for the mother, she said with a hint of regret, her life was saved, but she lost her uterus. Upon hearing this, the mother-in-law's vision went dark, and she nearly fainted. Tom Smith seemed to have been mentally prepared for this. He quickly supported the old woman, desperately pinching her philtrum, and hurriedly comforted her. She already has 3 sons, so losing her uterus is no big deal. It doesn't matter much. Upon hearing this, Edward Turner's mother also quickly asked, "How are the children?" 3 boys and 1 girl, right? 3 boys and 1 girl, but one of them. The nurse gave Edward Turner a suspicious glance, hesitating to speak further. "Did you have prenatal checkups? One of them looks a bit like a child with Down syndrome." "It's done, it's fine." Edward Turner waved his hand dismissively. "No matter how Down syndrome he is, he's still my son." The nurse gave him a strange look but eventually left. After confirming that the 3 sons were indeed correct, Edward Turner and his mother returned home contentedly. 3 days later, Mary was transferred out of the ICU. She was extremely weak, her lips pale, as if all her vitality had been drained. She leaned against the bed, utterly exhausted. The mother-in-law hurried over, offering her water and fussing over her with concern. Upon learning that her uterus was gone, Mary burst into tears the moment she saw her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law also held her and wept bitterly. Fortunately, she already had 3 sons. After crying for a while, Mary pulled herself together and went to express milk for them. The Edward Turner family had long since vanished without a trace. Knowing they wouldn't be able to see their eldest grandson anytime soon, they simply went home to sleep. After a few more days in the hospital, Mary was discharged with the children. back then, because she couldn't bear the thought of her daughter marrying far away. My mother-in-law had specifically arranged for Edward Turner to buy the house right across from ours. So now, it's incredibly convenient for her to visit her grandson. She pops over to the opposite door every few days. I've visited those children a few times myself. Although they were smaller than others at birth, they grew extremely fast. By the time they were just 3 months old, they were already much larger than other children of the same age in the neighborhood, and their appetites were astonishing. Mary stuffed herself with food desperately just to keep them fed. 3 months postpartum. She was already 40 pounds heavier than before giving birth, but as the child grew, she became increasingly reluctant to breastfeed, because the strength of those two hypermasculine boys was simply too great. Every time she nursed, Mary would be in so much pain that tears would stream down her face. She wanted to wean the baby, but Edward Turner's mother insisted that her eldest grandson must be breastfed. Mary didn't dare to resist at all, so she had no choice but to continue feeding. By the time they were 8 months old, the two supermasculine boys had already grown as big as 1-year-olds. Edward Turner's mother was absolutely delighted. My dear grandson, this is truly the grandson of my dreams." When they were 9 months old, while Mary was feeding them as usual, the two hypermasculine boys directly bit off Mary's nipples. Mary was quickly taken to the hospital by Edward Turner for emergency treatment. The doctor administered anesthesia to her and performed surgery. He also reminded her that she absolutely must not breastfeed during this period, as it could harm the child's health. Upon hearing this, Edward Turner's mother no longer insisted that she breastfeed. Only then was Mary able to wean off breastfeeding. In the blink of an eye, the children had already turned 1-year-old. When she had nothing else to do, Edward Turner's mother would push 4 baby strollers around the neighborhood. She would proudly show them off to anyone she met, boasting that these were her 4 precious children, but everyone in the neighborhood knew she had given birth to 2 supermale children, and they would steer clear of her whenever she approached. She never seemed to realize it, always trying to join in whenever she saw someone else out walking with their kids. As time went on, no one in the neighborhood came out to walk their kids anymore. Edward Turner's mother gave names to the children. For the eldest, she proudly named him Daniel Turner. The second child was named Eric Turner. The child with Down syndrome was named Sam Turner, meaning, as long as the Green Hills remain, there will be no shortage of firewood. There would still be chances to have a son in the future. The only normal girl was named Tina Turner. The children gradually grew up. Unlike other children who loved toys and playing in water, their 2 hyperactive boys loved slapping each other, giggling with delight whenever they saw the other wince in pain. Later, they probably realized that slapping each other would hurt themselves too, so they both turned their hands toward their younger brother with Down syndrome. Sam Turner was beaten until he cried. They heard the crying, but it only made them more excited. The 2 of them began punching and kicking Sam Turner. Every time this happened, Tina Turner would be so frightened that she would burst into loud sobs, but each time she cried, her mother-in-law would pick her up and move her aside, cursing under her breath. "Stupid little girl, what are you crying for? Your brothers are just building up their strength, don't you dare scare them." She reached out and slapped Tina Turner twice across the face. "If you keep crying, I'll beat you again." Tina Turner was so frightened that she froze, not even daring to cry anymore. Edward Turner's mother grew even more smug. Children need to be disciplined, without punishment. They won't amount to anything. Later, whenever Tina Turner was frightened into tears by Daniel and Eric, her mother-in-law would slap her relentlessly. After a few times, Tina Turner stopped crying, the light in her eyes faded, her gaze grew vacant like a rag doll's, and she would just stare blankly into space. At their 2-year-old checkup, the doctor said Tina Turner might have autism. The doctor urged them to take Tina Turner to a higher-level hospital for a follow-up as soon as possible and to seek intervention at the appropriate institutions. Edward Turner's mother flatly refused. "What's the point of spending money on that dead girl? She'll just end up married off to someone else's family anyway. I already have 3 grandsons. That's enough for me." The children grew day by day. Sam Turner, who was already a bit slow-witted, was beaten by them every now and then. And now he seemed even more dull. All he did was giggle foolishly all day long, with snot all over his face and no idea to wipe it off. Tina Turner also remained silent, sitting dazedly in the corner all day, clutching a rag doll in a trance. From the age of 4, Daniel and Eric became the neighborhood bullies. On weekdays, they would bully others in the neighborhood, and if they saw someone they didn't like, they would charge right in and start a fight. Because of this, Edward Turner's mother had to pay a lot of compensation in the neighborhood. yet she still patted the two boys' heads and praised them. Boys should be just like this, tough and strong. Nowadays, little boys are too soft. If this keeps up, they'll be ruined. Over time, everyone in the neighborhood grew afraid of their family. Not only were the children unwilling to play with them, but even the adults would take a detour when they saw them coming, with few people around during the day. The two found the neighborhood rather dull, so they killed and skinned all the stray cats and dogs in the area. They then stole money from home and bought a large number of firecrackers. They would wait at the entrance of the residential compound every day, and whenever they saw someone riding a bike in, they would throw firecrackers under their wheels. For several days in a row, they blew out quite a few tires. Old Man Lee from the neighboring building was so frightened that his blood pressure shot up to 180, and his family rushed him to the hospital that same day. When the news reached Mary's ears, she called her two sons over and scolded them. "We're all from the same neighborhood. If you're going to play around, you should know your limits. If this keeps up, who will ever want to deal with us again?" Daniel's gaze was heavy, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Then let's just kill them all." Mary told them to shut up. She took Daniel and Eric to apologize to Old Man Lee, and also bought a good amount of health supplements. But when Mary led the two into the hospital room, they exchanged a glance, then rushed over with a wicked grin, biting down hard on the old man's toes. Old Man Lee was so frightened he nearly jumped out of bed. He kicked his legs frantically. "Let go, let go." He desperately tried to hide toward the head of the bed, but the two children were too strong for him. No matter how hard he tried to break free, it only made his toes pull in the opposite direction. 2 of his toes were bitten clean off. Mary screamed in terror, let go of him. That's Grandpa Lee. He even bought you toys when you were little." She wanted to step forward and pull her toes out of the two children's mouths, but the 2 of them giggled, then turned their heads, spat it out with a tooey, and bit down hard on Mary's arms, 1 on each side. Mary could no longer spare a thought for Old Man Lee. She plopped down on the ground, desperately shoving Daniel, but the 2 of them were too strong. They had clamped down with a death grip, biting her arms and refusing to let go. They tore 2 chunks of flesh clean off her arms. Several elderly patients sharing the ward saw the 2 children with blood all over their mouths and screamed in terror. The family frantically pressed the call button, demanding that they be thrown out. Their story quickly spread throughout the hospital. Everyone looked at them with fear in their eyes. Mary was injured, yet everyone pointed at her, shouting for her to get out. She couldn't bear the strange looks from others, so she quickly had a nurse bandage her wound, got a shot, and fled in a panic. Upon returning home, Edward Turner's mother heard that Mary had been bitten and couldn't help but spit in disgust, cursing, "What a useless thing! How can a grown adult get bitten by a child? How stupid can you be?" Daniel and Eric hid behind their grandmother, giggling and making faces at her. Mary was furious. "Those 2 are devils. They're insane. You didn't see how they were just now." But before she could finish, Edward Turner's mother cut her off. "Don't you dare pin this on my grandson. They're good kids. You're just useless. Who knows where you bumped yourself?" Daniel and Eric also burst into laughter. "Mom must have been bitten by Uncle when she was playing with him outside." They laughed, and Edward Turner's mother laughed along with them, but soon, she couldn't laugh anymore. Uncle Lee's son arrived with property management and community staff, demanding that Edward Turner's family be evicted from the neighborhood. "That family is a bomb. They're demons. Letting them live here is like planting a landmine. Who knows when they might kill us all," he shouted emotionally. Then produced a petition signed by the entire neighborhood. "I strongly demand that their family be kicked out. If they aren't, I'll post everything they've done online. I'll make their family famous. I'll make the neighborhood famous. I'll make the whole community famous." Hearing this, Edward Turner's mother immediately took offense. She stood at the forefront, firmly shielding her 2 grandsons behind her. "What kind of demons are you talking about? They're just a bit mischievous. Were your own children perfectly well behaved from the start? Grown adults like you, unable to tolerate a little mischief from kids, did you spring into the world fully grown yourselves?" The 2 little troublemakers giggled behind their grandmother. They had no idea where they managed to dig up a firecracker. All they heard was Eric shouting, "Into the frying pan." Another one went, whoosh, in an instant. Numerous firecrackers whizzed past the hair of those people. They crackled and popped as they exploded all over the ground. The group was terrified and scattered in all directions, instantly turning the hallway into a chaotic mess. Daniel and Eric were overjoyed, clapping their hands and shouting excitedly. The community girl next to her had a hole burned in her skirt. She immediately screamed, "You little brat, born a troublemaker. Doesn't your family discipline him? You know he's bad." Yet you still let him play with firecrackers. Edward Turner's mother squinted her eyes, unwilling to back down. What's wrong with playing with firecrackers? Don't your kids play with firecrackers too? And you need to understand, they're usually very gentle. It's because you scared them that they acted this way. Hearing this, the others grew even angrier, pointing at Edward Turner's family and starting to shout over each other. Today they scared old man Lee into the hospital. So what about tomorrow? Can you guarantee they won't do something else tomorrow? If you don't discipline them soon, those two kids are bound to end up in juvenile detention. Before he could finish speaking, Eric threw a firecracker into his mouth. Fortunately, due to the height difference, the firecracker only tore a hole in his collar. The man was so startled that he squatted down on the ground. Seeing him in such a sorry state, Daniel burst into laughter. The people who came were furious at the sight and left with harsh words. They're still young and won't face criminal responsibility, but they have guardians. If this continues, your whole family will end up behind bars. They knew that talking to this family was like playing the lute to a cow, a complete waste of time. After saying what needed to be said, the group left. Mary had just not dared to show herself. Seeing that the group had left, she pulled the two of them, wanting to take them to apologize to the people in the neighborhood, but the two of them immediately hid behind their grandmother. Eric, in particular, glared at his mother with a resentful expression, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth, his eyes mature in a way that didn't resemble a child's at all. Mary felt a chill run down her spine. Edward Turner's mother shielded her grandson. Don't even think about taking them to apologize. Those troublemakers, I don't even want to be neighbors with them. Soon enough, I'll buy a villa for us all to move into. Daniel and Eric giggled with delight. Grandma is the best, Grandma is the best, we should reward Grandma. That night, after Edward Turner's mother entered her room, she suddenly let out a sharp scream. The sound was so loud that it startled Edward Turner and the others, who quickly turned on the lights and rushed to his mother's room. They found her in a state of shock, collapsed on the floor, with a pool of blood beneath her. Edward Turner was startled. Mom, what's wrong? Did you fall somewhere? His mother shook her head frantically, her face pale, but she was too frightened to speak. Following the direction of her finger, Edward Turner saw a cat on her bed. The cat had been skinned, its bloody flesh stuffed into her bedding. The quilt, the sheets, even the walls, all were covered in blood. Edward Turner's face darkened instantly. It was Daniel and Eric, wasn't it? The two children were sound asleep at this moment. Edward Turner strode over, grabbed them, and swung a club down. But he didn't expect that Daniel and Eric were only pretending to be asleep. The two of them nimbly dodged the swinging club, each kicking out with a foot, leaping up to stomp on Edward Turner's face. They had tremendous strength. With one kick, two of Edward Turner's teeth were knocked out. With bloodshot eyes, Edward Turner almost instantly grabbed both of them by the necks, lifted them up, and slammed them to the ground. With a loud crash, the two fell to the ground, howling in pain. Edward Turner's mother shouted, let go, this is my precious grandson." She hurried over to see how badly the two of them were injured, yet the two of them once again revealed that terrifying expression. Daniel Turner and Eric suddenly jumped up from the ground, each biting fiercely into Edward Turner's mother's ears from either side. Eric kicked Edward Turner's mother hard in the stomach again. It's all because you told on us. It's all because you told on us. I'm going to bite you to death. Another person also screamed, if you don't like the gifts my brother and I gave you, then you should just die. They bit down on Edward Turner's mother's ear, pressing her head down firmly. And with a sudden forceful tug, the ear was torn off, dripping with blood. Edward Turner's mother let out a sharp scream, her eyes rolled back, and she completely passed out from the pain. Edward Turner took his mother to the hospital. Daniel and Eric wanted to follow, but Edward Turner shouted at them to stop. He told Mary to keep an eye on the children at home and make sure nothing else went wrong. Mary was terrified. She begged Edward Turner to take her along. Not wanting to stay in the same house with Daniel and Eric, Edward Turner patted her shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry, my dad is already on his way. He's the best at disciplining children. That very night, Grandpa arrived. He brought with him a long stick, a family heirloom rattan cane. He firmly believed that filial piety is born from the rod. Back in the day, Edward Turner was also hot-tempered and had a penchant for hitting people. It was with this very rattan cane, stroke by stroke, that he was beaten into submission. The moment he laid eyes on Daniel and Eric, he tossed the rattan cane right in front of them. Having been a factory owner all his life, he spoke with a booming voice. Since no one is here to discipline you, I'll take on that role. From now on, you will follow my orders. He wrote a long page of house rules. including waking up at 7 a.m., going to bed before 9 p.m., and each meal not exceeding half an hour, but before he could finish reading it, the paper was snatched away by Daniel and Eric and torn to pieces. The two grinned at him. "Grandpa, you finally came. We've been waiting for you for a long time." Grandpa, unaware of the danger the two posed, picked up a rattan cane and cracked it on the ground. "Both of you, behave yourselves, no grinning and laughing while I'm talking." But before he could finish speaking, the rattan cane was snatched away by the two of them. With a sharp crack, the rattan cane was snapped in two. Grandfather's eyes widened, but before he could utter a word, another crack sounded as the cane whipped across his head. A red mark instantly appeared on his forehead. Daniel burst into laughter, and Eric also revealed a sinister smile. "Next time you threaten someone, it won't be as simple as a knock on the head." Grandpa was stunned. "How are you even more terrifying than your father was back in the day?" Eric Turner curled his lip. "Really, what was our father like back then?" Sam Turner, who was standing nearby, burst into terrified wails, only to be struck by Eric Turner with a whip. "All you do is cry all day long. It's so annoying." Tina Turner glanced at them indifferently, her expression dull and completely unruffled. It was precisely this kind of expression that angered Eric once again. He raised the rattan cane, making a move as if to strike Tina Turner. The old man quickly turned sideways to block her. The cane landed directly on him, and he grimaced in pain. Just as he was about to scold them, Eric kicked him to the ground. Eric stepped on him, thrust the broken tip of the cane into his waist, and then laughed happily. "You're quite the compassionate one, aren't you? If you're so compassionate, why haven't you come to see us all these years? Is making money really that important, or is it that you just don't like us?" The old man was already drenched in sweat from the pain, pinned down by Eric's foot. He couldn't move at all. His hand twisted at an unnatural angle. On top of that, given his advanced age, no matter how hard he struggled, he simply couldn't break free. He could only beg for mercy. "Second grandson, let me stand up first, and we can talk this out properly." Eric curled his lip. How boring, giving up so quickly. He shifted his leg aside, and Grandpa struggled to his feet. Fortunately, Eric hadn't stabbed too deeply, and only a little blood trickled from his waist. His eyes filled with heartache as he looked at the bruises on Tina Turner's arm. Holding her tightly in his arms, he said to Mary, "If you can't take care of her, I might as well take her away. I'll take her back to my hometown and get her treated." Mary could no longer worry about Tina Turner at this moment. With a choked voice, she grabbed hold of her grandfather. "You can't leave now. You can't abandon me all alone. At least wait until Edward Turner and the others come back." The old man was drenched in sweat. "I'm not feeling very comfortable here. I'll just go to the hospital to check on Edward Turner's mother and then leave." He picked up Tina Turner and fled as if escaping. Mary really didn't want to stay in the same room with the two supermasculine men, so she decided to follow along. Since everyone was leaving, Daniel and Eric also tagged along for the ride. The group stormed into the hospital in a grand procession. Edward Turner's mother was still recuperating in her hospital bed. Both of her ears were wrapped in bandages, making her look quite comical. Beside her, Edward Turner was peeling an apple for her. Seeing them approach, Edward Turner's mother was startled and immediately became alert. "What are you doing here?" Grandfather turned sideways to block Daniel and Daniel's line of sight, quickly giving Edward Turner's mother a meaningful look. "Why don't you come back to the hometown with me? The factory there is busy with business and needs extra hands. The two kids here are already grown up and don't need your care anymore." Edward Turner's mother understood the implication in his words and hurriedly shook her head in refusal. No, I still have to stay and take care of my son. He's the only precious treasure I have in this life. What would I do if he ever got bullied?" She saw Tina Turner in her grandfather's arms. "Take her away. Your brother's family has always wanted a granddaughter. Just give her to them." Edward Turner's mother got out of bed, wanting to see the old man off, but the moment she slipped her foot into her shoe, she let out a sharp cry of pain. She quickly pulled her foot back, but the inside of the shoe was already soaked in blood. Someone had placed a nail in her shoe. The mother-in-law hurriedly tried to take off the other shoe, but something inside suddenly bit her foot. She reached in, frightened, only to have her hand bitten by a centipede. Daniel and Eric burst into laughter beside her. "Fun, so much fun, really fun." Edward Turner's mother bared her teeth in fury. Her gaze fell on Mary, who was cowering nearby, too afraid to make a sound, and she cursed angrily. "It's all because of you, you worthless thing, insisting on giving birth to them back then. If it weren't for you, we might have had a healthy grandson by now. It's all your fault, you fool." Hearing this, Mary also grew furious. Back then, I was being criticized so harshly. It was you who said the 2 children were our grandsons, and that's why I decided to keep them. If it weren't for you, how could things have turned out like this? Besides, I saw how much you liked them before. Edward Turner, seeing her talk back, was so angry that he slapped her across the face. How dare you speak to Mom like that? She only has our best interests at heart, as the saying goes, like mother, like son. The way our son is now is all because of how you raised him. Bullshit, you're never home, and when something goes wrong, you blame it all on me. Mary refused to back down, slapping him hard across the face. The two soon tumbled into a fierce scuffle. Beside them, Daniel and Eric laughed with particular delight, clapping and cheering. Hit her harder, Dad. Hit her harder. Beat Mom to death. Mom, you need to push harder. This is so boring. Why isn't there any blood? Grandpa, standing nearby, wore an expression as if he'd seen a ghost. Without uttering another word, he quietly picked up Tina Turner and ran off. A few days later, Edward Turner's mother was discharged from the hospital. She pulled Mary aside. I'm giving you 2 options. Either you and Edward Turner have another child, or Edward Turner finds a surrogate. Either way, I won't tolerate the family fortune falling into the hands of these 2 monsters. Mary's face turned ashen. Mom, you know I can't have any more children, so, you must accept George going out to find a surrogate. If you don't accept it, a hint of ruthlessness flickered in her eyes, then don't blame me for directly telling George to go out and find another woman. Mom, you can't do this, Mary cried out in a panic. Back then, it was to give your family a grandson that I ruined my uterus. How can you turn your back on me now? She grabbed Edward Turner's mother's hand. You have to buy the villa first, then I'll agree to Edward Turner finding a surrogate, otherwise, I have no security at all. But Edward Turner's mother didn't even look at her, roughly shaking off her hand. What I said back then was, if you gave birth to a grandson, I'd buy you a villa, but look at what you've given birth to. 2 troublemakers and 1 with a mental disability. If even one had been normal, I would have bought it for you. Edward Turner's mother snorted coldly. I'll be blunt here, either accept Edward Turner finding another woman, or take your 3 sons and get out. Our family doesn't need grandsons like that. But before she could finish her words, Eric suddenly darted out from some corner. His face was contorted into a terrifying grimace, and he grabbed Edward Turner's mother by the neck, pinning her against the wall. Didn't you love my grandma the most? Don't you want us anymore? Though he was smiling, his expression was horrifying. He stood up, towering a full head taller than Edward Turner's mother. Edward Turner's mother was terrified, her lips trembling uncontrollably. No, I was just saying it in anger. But he and Daniel Turner paid no heed to her explanation, picking up the ashtray from the table and smashing it toward her head. With a clang, it smashed right through, leaving a bloody hole. Mary was terrified, frantically waving her hands. No, I was just talking to Grandma. You didn't need to be so impulsive. Eric's gaze was bloodthirsty, coldly fixed on Mary's face. Mom, what about you? Do you not want us either? No, that's not it. Mary was terrified, stepping back abruptly. I don't. Grandma and I were discussing buying a villa for you all. Once we get the villa, our whole family will move in together. But Eric simply wouldn't listen to her. He was in a foul mood right now, and when he was in a foul mood, he wanted to hit someone. He raised his hand and slapped Mary across the face, then followed up with a kick. Mary let out a cry of pain as she fell to the ground. When Edward Turner returned, he was met with this scene. His mother's face was covered in blood. Mary was also lying on the ground, and the 2 children beside them wore expressions of unusual delight. His head was spinning. He quickly called an ambulance to take his mother to the hospital. That night, his mother underwent major surgery. After the surgery, a piece of his skull was missing, leaving a sunken dent in his head that looked as eerie as could be. Mary was slightly better off. She only had a fracture and could be discharged after a few days of rest. During this time, Daniel and Eric, with no one to keep an eye on them, wandered around outside the neighborhood. When they passed by the cake shop, they were captivated by the cakes in the display window. They went in and directly asked for it. But the people there didn't know them at all, nor did they know who they were, and they were flatly refused. They grabbed a nearby mop and smashed the glass counter right then and there. The bakery staff called the police on the spot, and they were taken into custody. Later, it was my mother-in-law who paid the money and bailed them out. My mother-in-law didn't know how brutal they were. She only knew that the Liu family had been taking turns going to the hospital recently, according to Mary. She was beaten by her 2 sons, but my mother-in-law thought it was just mischievous behavior from little boys. seeing the two children so hungry that they tried to steal food from a bakery. She felt heartbroken and immediately brought them home. In the new environment, the two of them finally behaved themselves for a few days. After some time, Mary and Edward Turner's mother were both discharged from the hospital. But Edward Turner was nowhere to be seen. And he didn't return for 3 whole months. Mary couldn't wait any longer and went to confront Edward Turner's mother. Edward Turner's mother, however, curled her lip and said indifferently, "I told you before, I found a surrogate for Edward Turner. That girl is fresh and lovely, and she's even a college student. Now Edward Turner has moved in to live with her." "What?" Mary exploded instantly. "Didn't you say you found a surrogate? What does moving in with her mean? We're not divorced yet. It's your own fault for being incompetent." Edward Turner's mother glanced her up and down, disdainfully remarking, "If you were truly capable, no matter how charming the women outside are, they wouldn't be able to lure him away." Mary was furious. "No. Find someone else. I don't agree to this person being our surrogate. That's not up to you." Edward Turner's mother sneered. "That girl is already carrying our family's first grandson in her belly. She's young, after all, easy to conceive." Mary was dumbfounded. She angrily pounded on our door, and once she barged in, she went into a frenzied, hysterical fit of screaming. "Rose, it was you who told me not to have an abortion back then, who made me give birth to 2 monsters. Now Edward Turner doesn't want this family anymore. Give me back Edward Turner, give me back my villa." She raised her hand to hit me, but I pushed her to the ground. I laughed. "I only showed you a doctor's debunking video. The final decision was in your hands. Back then, you were criticized so harshly by netizens, yet you insisted on giving birth. I didn't interfere. And get your priorities straight. It's Edward Turner who cheated. What's the point of coming to my house?" Her face turned pale. "So what should I do now?" I wrote down an address and gave it to her. It was the address I had secretly noted down a few days earlier, when that female college student came to the hospital to register her file. "He wants to run away from this family, doesn't he? Then you should take your 2 sons to confront him face to face. Ask him if he really intends to abandon you all. And make sure that girl knows Edward Turner has a family." She understood, exactly. "We rise and fall together. No one gets to jump out of this abyss alone." I beckoned to Daniel Turner and Eric. "Your father doesn't want you anymore. He has a new mother outside, and she's already pregnant. Would you be willing to give your mother some courage and accompany her there?" Mary quickly chimed in to reinforce the idea. "He's been living with his new mom for the 3 months he hasn't been home. From now on, his house and his money will all belong to his little brother. Did you see that? He's run off because he's tired of you. I'm the only one in this family who will never abandon you." The 2 children, already impulsive by nature, grew even more worked up after hearing these words. "Let's go. Kill him, yeah, teach him a lesson, throw him into the oil pot and fry him to death." She took her 2 sons and, following the address I gave her, stormed over in a rage. When they reached the entrance of the residential complex, Mary told her 2 sons to wait outside while she went in first to negotiate. The 2 children exchanged a glance, as if they had thought of something amusing again, and smiled in unison. Mary didn't notice. The female college student lived across from our hospital. I found a hospital room, zoomed in the phone camera to its maximum, and could just see Edward Turner and the female college student's home. I saw Edward Turner hear the knocking and get up to answer the door, seeing that it was Mary. He froze for a moment. I couldn't make out what he said, but then I saw Mary shove him aside, rush in, and slap the female college student. She was shouting something at the student, her face dark with anger. The female college student's lower abdomen was slightly swollen. She carefully protected her belly, but after being hit, she didn't hesitate to slap back. Mary, driven by fury, grabbed a nearby stool and swung it toward the girl's stomach, but she was forcefully shoved away by Edward Turner. Edward Turner stopped Mary, turned his head, and said something to the college student, who then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Mary wanted to chase after her, but Edward Turner stopped her. The female college student ran all the way outside the residential area and had just taken out her phone when, at that moment, Daniel and Eric somehow got their hands on a motorcycle. They rode on the motorcycle, shouting and screaming, revving the throttle to the max, and charged straight toward the female college student. The speed was terrifyingly fast, and the female college student's face turned pale with fear. She didn't even know how to dodge, staring wide-eyed as the car hurtled toward her, her pupils dilated with terror. The car drew closer and closer, about to hit her the very next second. At the critical moment, Eric slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched sharply against the pavement. The car stopped less than half a meter away from the female college student. Terrified, her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground, her face instantly drained of color. Bright red blood slowly flowed from between her legs as she clutched her stomach and screamed in agony. But the residential complex didn't even have a security guard, and at this hour, there were hardly any people around, apart from Daniel and Eric. No one could hear her cries. Eric burst into laughter. "My dear father. Besides us, you can forget about having any other children." He then revved the throttle and drove off with Daniel. By the time Edward Turner learned of all this, 10 minutes had already passed. He had negotiated terms with Mary and escorted her out of the residential complex. At the entrance of the complex, he saw a woman in a white dress lying unconscious on the ground. A pool of blood had spread beneath her. Against the backdrop of the white dress, the scene appeared especially horrifying. His entire body stiffened into a stone. Snapping back to reality, he stumbled and crawled over on all fours. "Sherry, Sherry, what's wrong with you?" He shouted Sherry's name loudly while continuously slapping her face. No matter how he shouted, Sherry remained completely unresponsive, her hand hanging limply on the ground as if she had lost consciousness. He was terrified out of his mind, trembling as he took out his phone and dialed the ambulance. Mary came out at that moment and was shocked to see the pool of blood on the ground. She wanted to step closer to see what had happened, but Edward Turner pushed her away forcefully. "Get out, get away from us, you jinx." He scooped Sherry up in his arms and hurried toward the roadside. Mary didn't dare contact Edward Turner for several days in a row. She knew all of this was done by Daniel and Eric, and she even regretted having taken them to Sherry's neighborhood in the first place. She was afraid that Edward Turner was still angry, and her appearance might further provoke him. If he were to find out that she hadn't come to the neighborhood alone back then and blame her for it, their relationship might never be the same again. She had been hiding at her parents' home all this time. She thought that Edward Turner would eventually contact her. She would wait for Edward Turner to contact her first, and then she would shift all the blame onto me. They would surely reconcile and be as good as before. But after waiting for a month, Edward Turner still hadn't reached out to her. She finally couldn't sit still any longer and called Edward Turner, but the call was hung up. She wanted to ask Edward Turner's mother how he was doing. Finally mustering the courage, she opened the door to her own home, only to find that the quilt on her mother-in-law's bed was neatly folded, and the clothes in the wardrobe were gone. In the living room, everything belonging to Edward Turner and his mother had completely vanished. It was only then that she recalled. It seemed she hadn't heard her mother-in-law's voice at all during this time. She didn't even hear the sound of the door opening across the way. A bad premonition rose in her heart. She called Edward Turner's mother again. But Edward Turner's mother still hung up. She had no choice but to send a text message to Edward Turner. "What do you mean? Are you avoiding me?" Edward Turner did not reply to her. After waiting for a long time, she sent another message. "I admit, I am responsible for Sherry's matter. Let's talk properly." After waiting for a long while, her phone finally rang. She hurriedly opened it, and a text message popped up. It was a bank notification. 1 million yuan had been deposited into her account. She was stunned for a moment, and then Edward Turner's message followed right after. 1 million for you. A lawyer will contact you tomorrow to discuss the divorce. Don't look for me anymore. You can have our son. Let's part on good terms. She went mad, as if something had exploded in her mind. He desperately called Edward Turner, but Edward Turner refused to answer no matter what. She went to the police again. But the police pointed to the word lawyer in the text message and said that Edward Turner wasn't missing. This was a family matter, and they should handle it themselves or file a lawsuit. She was at a complete loss, frantic and without any clue what to do. Unable to hold back, she took out her phone again, pressed the voice message button, and shouted at Edward Turner, "What do you mean by giving me 1 million? Come back right now." "I don't want 1 million, I just want you to come back." Edward Turner did not respond. She frantically sent messages. "I'm begging you, come back. You can't leave these 2 children with me. I'll die." She frantically sent messages, until her voice finally carried a hint of a sob. "I beg you, as long as you're willing to show up, I'll do anything. I don't care who you live with, I'll accept it all. Just please come back, I'm begging you." But when she sent the message again, it showed that she was no longer on the other person's friend list. She completely lost her mind. She hurriedly bought a train ticket to Edward Turner's hometown. Just as she was putting down her phone and packing her bags, Daniel suddenly burst in from outside the door. The two of them grinned and reached out to her. "Mom, we heard. You have 1 million. What? How did you know?" Mary frantically wiped away her tears, hurriedly hiding her phone behind her back. "That's not true, you must have misheard." The two of them were still smiling, but their grins now carried a hint of menace. "Are you sure about that, dear mother? We really hate it when people lie to us." At this time, Daniel and Daniel were already in their first year of junior high school. Both of them were a full head taller than Mary. Mary was a bit scared and instinctively shrank back into the corner. "This was given by your father. I have to return it to him. If I accept it, he'll never come back for good. I beg you, please don't make a fuss with me." She wanted to turn back to continue packing, but suddenly a hand clamped around her neck. Eric, with a ferocious expression, lifted her off the ground and pushed her toward the balcony edge. His fingers tightened, roughly squeezing her throat as he hissed menacingly, "Hand over the money, or I'll kill you." Mary was pinned firmly against the wall by him, unable to move. The window behind her was open, and the wall only reached halfway up her back. Eric's strength was overwhelming. Her entire upper body was already leaning out of the window, the wind howling past her ears. Eric's face was twisted with rage, his eyes filled with violence, as if he were about to push her out at any moment. Mary's teeth chattered uncontrollably, and she screamed in terror, "Son, don't do anything rash. Let's go inside and talk properly. The money really is your father's. I never intended to take a single cent from him." But the more she explained, the more agitated Eric became. His eyes were wide with fury, and he pushed her toward the window with all his strength. Mary struggled desperately. Eric, his eyes bloodshot, lifted her feet and threw her down. With a thud, screams erupted from downstairs. Someone shouted, "Someone's been crushed to death." I looked up toward the sound and saw Mary already lying on the ground. Beside her lay another woman, heavily pregnant. It seemed she had been taking a walk in the neighborhood with her husband when disaster struck. She was hit by Mary's fall. Her husband knelt beside her, weeping and wailing, until she was carried on to the ambulance. He didn't follow. Instead, with a face full of rage, he stormed upstairs. His eyes blazed with fury as he kicked open the door to Edward Turner's house. "Was it someone from your family who jumped? Why did they have to jump in the residential area? Couldn't they have gone somewhere farther away to die?" His gaze swept around the room. Only the dazed Sam Turner remained in the house. Daniel and Eric were nowhere to be seen. The man, unaware of the truth, seemed to have found his target. In a few quick strides, he rushed over and grabbed Sam Turner by the collar. "Is that woman your mother? Why did she jump off the building? Did you provoke her?" Sam Turner stared at him blankly, completely unable to understand what he was saying. The man took Sam Turner's silence for fear and slapped him across the face. "Talk, damn you, talk." Sam Turner didn't answer, just chuckled foolishly. That laugh felt more like a provocation. There happened to be a basin of water in the sink, so he grabbed Sam Turner by the collar and shoved his head into the water. Then he was lifted out of the water again. "Since your mother can't teach you properly, I'll do it for her." Sam Turner's entire body trembled violently. The man thought Sam Turner had finally learned to fear, so he grabbed his hair tightly and shoved his head back into the water. "You drove your mother to her death. Why did you have to provoke her at this very moment?" Sam Turner struggled desperately. He tried to grab the edge of the pool to climb out, but the man pressed his head down firmly. The man roared, "Have you ever experienced death? I'll let you experience 20 seconds of it." After saying this, there were still 10 seconds left. He began the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7. By the count of 1, Sam Turner had already stopped struggling. He was quite satisfied, pulling him out and throwing him to the ground. "Because you didn't listen, your mother was so angry she jumped off a building, and my wife's fate is still unknown. From now on, you need to be more obedient, understand?" Sam Turner lay limp on the ground, his lips pale and his face turning purple. The man was still scolding. "It's because there are too many brats like you that parents are under so much pressure. Their demands are simple. They just want you to study hard. Is that so difficult? Tell me, what's so hard about it?" Sam Turner lay motionless on the ground. The man kept chattering on, as if sensing something was off. His expression suddenly changed. He instinctively crouched down and reached out to check his breathing, but as his hand neared the man's nose, he was horrified and abruptly fell back onto the ground. His voice then trembled to the point of distortion. "Someone's dead, someone's dead." When the police arrived, the man was still shouting, "I didn't mean to kill him, I just wanted to teach him a lesson. I held him down for 20 seconds. How could he die in just 20 seconds? The neighbors who had gathered knew the truth and couldn't help but reply, "He has Down syndrome. His mind isn't fully developed. How could he possibly hold his breath?" The man was stunned. How could this happen? How could this happen? His legs went weak, and his pants were soaked, but I was still handcuffed and taken away in a police car. my mother-in-law and my husband, Tom Smith, were still out buying groceries. They only realized something had happened in the neighborhood when they heard the sound of the police car. They rushed over upon hearing the news and listened as everyone was talking, saying the person who died was Mary. The mother-in-law's vegetable basket fell to the ground, and she hurriedly climbed upstairs, but the door of Edward Turner's house across the way had already been sealed off. My daughter, she collapsed on the floor, slapping her thighs and wailing loudly. Tom Smith had been searching for Daniel and Eric. He searched for a long time, but there was no trace of the two of them at home or in the residential complex. He then went outside the complex to look, but halfway there, someone suddenly set off a firecracker that exploded right in his hair. Blood immediately began to flow from the top of his head. Daniel and Eric jumped out from the grass, clapping and cheering. Ha ha ha, this is so much fun, really so much fun. Tom Smith saw them and could no longer laugh. His gaze toward them was filled with terror, as if he had seen a devil. Eric was quickly taken away by the police. In the building opposite, someone had installed a surveillance camera at home, which happened to capture the moment Eric pushed Mary off the building. In the evening, I heard Tom Smith and my mother-in-law talking in the room. This can't go on, he's a born troublemaker. Now that his mother is dead and his father has run away, the police will definitely ask us to take in Daniel. If we rashly let him stay at home, it might bring endless trouble. My mother-in-law quietly wiped away her tears, then anxiously said, "What should we do? He's not normal. I've already lost one daughter. I can't let anything happen to you too." My husband smoked one cigarette after another, saying nothing. It was at that moment I walked in and offered a suggestion. You pretend to take him on a trip, then abandon him in the mountains. Just say you got separated. If you're really lucky, you might even find a family without a son and give him to them. Once he's in those deep mountain valleys, there's no way he'll ever get out. If he tries to run, the whole village will beat him to death. My mother-in-law nodded in agreement. That's a good idea, son. You should make the trip in the next few days. My daughter has already been killed by him. We can't afford any more trouble. I turned to my mother-in-law and said, "You and Tom Smith both have to go. Since it's a trip, going together will keep him from getting suspicious." Mother-in-law hesitated for a moment, but thinking of Mary's tragic situation, she agreed. Daniel Turner was still a child after all. Upon hearing that he was being taken out to play, he immediately got excited and went to pack his things. Mother-in-law and Tom Smith exchanged a glance, then also packed a few simple items into their bags. They discussed through the night and decided on a coal mining area in Shaanxi as their destination. Daniel Turner was already in his teens, and if sent into the mountains, it was unlikely any family would be willing to adopt him. They planned to send Daniel Turner to the mining area to work as a coal miner. That's the place most in need of people, and it's far away too. If Daniel Turner goes there, he'll never be able to escape in this lifetime. Before leaving, the mother-in-law lit 3 sticks of incense. She muttered under her breath, "I didn't mean any harm. I just want my son to live a good life. Besides, that place is quite suitable for Daniel Turner. They need strong men there. Who knows? Maybe Daniel Turner can even make something of himself over there." Tom Smith urged his mother to stop nagging and hurry up. The two of them loaded Daniel Turner's things into the car. Before leaving, I waved at Daniel Turner. "Come here for a moment." Daniel Turner looked at me impatiently. "What's up?" I took out the Ultraman toy. "Come here, this is for you." He walked over with a sidelong glance and snatched the Ultraman toy. Behind the Ultraman toy's paper card, there was also a phone. I said to him, "Auntie wants to go play too, but Auntie can't adjust her work schedule. If you can keep the call connected 24 hours a day on your trip, so Auntie can hear what you're up to, then Auntie will give you this phone." I knew he wanted a phone. He had previously snatched someone's phone at the school gate, but unfortunately, the victim turned out to be a street thug who immediately gathered a group to beat up Daniel Turner. Later, when the two of them demanded $1 million from Mary, they also planned to buy a phone first. Urged by Tom Smith, he got into the car with the Ultraman toy. In the car, I heard Tom Smith trying to talk to Daniel. "That place is really fun. You can stay and play for a few more days. No rush. I've asked the teacher for a week off, and if that's not enough, I'll ask for more." Daniel fiddled with his phone. Ignoring him, Tom Smith added, "If you like that place, I can help you transfer there." Daniel gave him a sinister glance. That single glance silenced Tom Smith. The car drove for days and nights, finally arriving in Shaanxi. During this time, it was almost always Tom Smith and the mother-in-law pretending to chat lightly, while Daniel remained silent. By the time the car entered the mountainous area, it was already 4 days later. it seemed as if Daniel wasn't in the car. As I heard Tom Smith excitedly talking to the mother-in-law, "Almost there, just 20 more kilometers to go, I've already contacted the people over there, we'll drop Daniel Turner off and leave right away, the roads there are rough, and it's all locals, even if he tries to run, he won't get far." Mother-in-law smacked her lips contentedly. "Wonderful, we can finally be rid of this devil." At that moment, I sent a text message to Daniel Turner from a phone number I don't usually use. "Their talk of a trip is just a cover, they plan to abandon you there, sell you off to work in the coal mines, they want to get rid of you, this burden, before it's too late, you need to run." After reading the message, Daniel Turner shot to his feet. His sudden movement startled his mother-in-law, who immediately turned and snapped at him. "What are you doing? The road here is bumpy, sit down quickly." Could Daniel Turner simply ignored him? He pulled out a pair of scissors from somewhere. Gripping Tom Smith's neck from behind, holding the scissors against Tom Smith's neck, a sinister voice whispered into his ear, "Uncle, where do you plan on taking me?" Tom Smith was so terrified he couldn't speak. He wanted to step on the brake, but Daniel Turner directly jabbed the tip of the scissors in. "No stopping, keep driving." Tom Smith had no choice but to comply. He stammered out another explanation. "We were going to take you out to have fun, didn't we agree on that before we left? You seemed pretty happy about it at the time." Daniel pushed the scissors in a little deeper. "Uncle, I don't like lies, I want to hear the truth." Tom Smith's lips trembled as he explained in a shaky voice, "This is the truth, we really do have a relative there. If you don't believe me, ask your grandmother." "Yes, that's right, we do have a relative there, everything has already been arranged." The mother-in-law was trembling all over with fear, trying to snatch the scissors from Daniel's hand. But he was frightened back by Daniel Turner's fierce glare. He tightly gripped Tom Smith's neck. "Uncle, don't hide it from me anymore, I know you all want to sell me off." "No, no, who told you that?" Feeling the pain in his neck, Tom Smith was so scared he nearly pissed himself. Seeing there were no cars ahead, he quickly forced himself to pull it together, trying to divert Daniel Turner's attention. "We have a relative there. Don't listen to others stirring things up. I never thought about selling you, you know how well your uncle and grandmother treated you before." The mother-in-law also opened Tom Smith's phone and showed it to him. That was the person in charge of the coal mining area he had contacted earlier. To avoid being discovered by others, he had saved the contact under the name, Keith, a friend. "See, this Keith is my friend, the note is clearly written here. We just want to go visit him for a few days." Daniel Turner's grip loosened a little. Really, we're just going for fun, besides, Grandma only asked for a week off for you, it's not like we're dropping out of school, how could we not go back?" Daniel Turner didn't speak, his face fierce as he stared intently at him, as if weighing the truth in his words. Just then, Tom Smith slammed on the brakes. Daniel Turner lost his balance and crashed into the front seat. Seizing the opportunity, Tom Smith swiftly turned around, grabbed Daniel Turner's wrist, and tried to wrest the scissors from his hand, but Daniel Turner quickly snapped back to his senses and delivered a fierce kick to Tom Smith's face. His strength was immense, and the force of the kick sent Tom Smith crashing into the windshield behind him. The old woman was so frightened by the situation that she burst into tears. She wanted to check how badly Tom Smith was injured, but Daniel Turner stabbed the scissors into her shoulder. "Ah!" the old woman screamed. Blood gushing out like a fountain, she clutched her shoulder, unable to move. Tom Smith grimaced in pain, his head spinning as he tried to grab the steering wheel, but within seconds, Daniel got out from the back seat, pulled open the front door, and dragged Tom Smith out. Tom Smith was dragged like a dead dog to the back seat, his hands and feet tightly bound with rope. Daniel returned to the driver's seat, stepped on the gas, and the car sped off. The wind howled past their ears from the sheer speed. "Stop the car, stop the car," Tom Smith roared. Daniel Turner burst into maniacal laughter. Tom Smith leaned forward, frantically slamming his body against the seat in front of him. Daniel Turner's eyes bulged almost out of their sockets. He clenched his teeth tightly, his gaze fixed unwaveringly ahead. At that moment, Tom Smith, having somehow freed his bound wrists, suddenly wrapped the rope around Daniel Turner's neck from behind. He shouted a threat right into his ear, "Stop the car, or I'll strangle you." Daniel did not stop the car, his face twisted into a ferocious grin, and he laughed wildly, so hard that tears were about to spill from his eyes. "Come on, strangle me." He floored the accelerator, his expression strange, yet his hands relaxed comfortably off the steering wheel. The car instantly lost control, speeding straight ahead. Tom Smith was horrified, shouting and yelling for his mother-in-law to hit the brakes. But it was already too late. Ahead lay the cliff. The car plunged down at full speed. When the police found me, I was crying my heart out, on the verge of fainting. The child just lost their mother. They said they were taking the child out to play and get some fresh air. How could something like this happen? After their car plunged off the cliff, it burst into flames. That area was already desolate and sparsely populated, with very few passers-by, by the time someone discovered the scene. They quickly called on villagers to put out the fire. In the end, only 3 charred bodies were pulled from the wreckage. The phones of several people were reduced to a pile of scrap metal in the fire. The police eventually closed the case as a routine traffic accident, and because Tom Smith had bought insurance every year, after his death, I received a compensation payment. At the same time, Eric's verdict was also announced: death penalty. With this, all the troublemakers have been dealt with. Each meeting their end, I sent a message to Edward Turner, informing him of Eric's death sentence. I also asked if he wanted to see Eric one last time. He refused without a second thought. Through Edward Turner's social media posts, I learned that Tina Turner is now doing very well. Their whole family favors boys over girls, but Grandpa is the only one who likes girls. After returning, Grandpa hired the best doctors to treat her and found many playmates for her. Although the little girl is still a bit behind her peers, she lives each day with great joy. Edward Turner remarried, but not to Sherry. At the time of the wedding, the woman was pregnant, but it seems she later had an abortion. On the other end of the phone, Edward Turner seemed to find a direct refusal awkward and sent me another message. I saw the news. Your mother-in-law and your husband have both passed away. Don't be too sad. You still need to stay strong and keep living. He transferred another sum of money to me. It's not easy for a woman on her own, since we were once family. Take the money and find someone new to marry as soon as possible. I withdrew the money to my bank card with great satisfaction. The cause of death for Tom Smith and the others could not be verified by the police, and Edward Turner would not delve into it, nor would other relatives give it much thought. As for Edward Turner, I think he will probably never return here again in his lifetime. For him, this place is nothing short of a nightmare. I put away my phone, smiling with immense joy. My heart has never felt so at ease, after hearing the story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel.